morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Hailey, for anyone who doesn't know me, and this is Zach. So our topic this morning is on reincarnation, which is a very interesting topic, and it was interesting for me to tune into. I think when we start to look at reincarnation, at first it's kind of exciting because it explains a lot of things, like why are there are these child prodigies who have these amazing skills to play piano when they're 3 years old, or do these beautiful works of art, and we can look at that through the lens of reincarnation and understand that they've kind of developed these things in themselves over past lives. It can also help to explain and help us to understand why we can look around in the world and see so much seeming injustice in the world and different circumstances people find themselves in. And we can really look at that and say, well, that's really not fair. It shouldn't be like this. But when we look at it through the lens of reincarnation and that soul's karma, then we can understand that they are really just getting what it is that they need to grow and learn and progress and come closer to God. And so, it, in a sense, is a very comforting thought, because it just explains a lot of things that otherwise it just would seem totally random. And then we kind of start to look at it a little more closely, and we think it's also kind of an overwhelming thought that we've lived millions of lives. Yogananda said that it takes 8 million lives just to reach the human level. And that seems like, I don't even know how to comprehend what 8 million lives before we reach the human level feels like. But it feels like a very long time. And so to me, what this kind of said to me was, one, it's, wow, we've been at this a really long time. And in the context of looking at our lives that we're currently in, it gives us this expanded view and this bigger perspective where we can look back and say we've really been through a lot. And it's interesting because in the reading it points out that we don't actually remember our past lives. And so it's kind of like we're going forward with a little bit of faith that this did happen, but it feels true. So we can just go forward with that. But we get so consumed with what's happening with us just in this very moment, the circumstances that we're going through in our daily lives. And it can really help us to step back and to understand that these circumstances that we find ourselves in were specifically designed for us. That everything from our past led us to this very moment, and it's exactly as it should be. And the challenges that we're getting and the tests that are coming to us are exactly what we need in this moment to grow. And so while it's very easy to get caught up in these challenges and start to blame others or look outside of ourselves for why things happened, reincarnation helps us to understand that it's all of our past habits, our past actions that drew this, whatever it is, if it's a particular situation, drew it to ourselves. And then we have to ask ourselves, not necessarily, although it could be helpful at times, how did I get here? But really the important question is, what do I do about it now? And we can get very, pulled in these different directions of trying to justify things, feeling bad for ourselves. But what we're really called to do is to view things more impersonally, more objectively, from a calm place in our hearts, to try to stay even-minded, to call on the divine, to ask for help, to understand what is it that I'm supposed to overcome here. That was from the reading, Jesus saying, those that overcome, I will make a pillar in my church. And so really that's our key. It's just that sense of overcoming our likes and dislikes, whatever it is that is creating a disturbance in ourselves. How do we overcome that and find that sense of equanimity and peace in ourselves? We've lived, all these so many lives and looked for happiness in the world, and we've tried this and we've tried that. And for millions of lifetimes we've tried to find our source of happiness in the world. And, as we go along that journey, we start to realize so many things didn't give us that happiness we were looking for. And it's almost like we realize, wow, it's kind of a setup. And we're not going to find it out there. We have to actually turn within. And Yogananda says, most human beings have total resistance to being guided from within. And we can sit here and think, well, of course that's what I want. But how often when we have those difficult situations, or even the wonderful situations, are we really looking within and saying, okay, how do I respond to this? And that's really, he said, that's our way out. That's our way to transcend all of our past karma, is to stop playing the game of karma in the world and start to go within. I had this image come to me of, like a giant knot, like you have this ball of yarn that somehow something happened along the way, probably several things, and you just have this knotted mass, and it just looks impossible. How am I going to untie this? And we can start to think about, well, starting from one end and slowly untying it. And I've done that with a ball of yarn, and sometimes you can do that. Sometimes it's not too knotted and you can actually work through it and untie it, and sometimes it's just this huge nest and you can't do it. It's not worth the effort that it would take to go through and undo every little thing that would get it back to this nice whole piece again. And that's where the guru comes in. That's where we pray to God and pray to the masters and ask for their grace and ask for their help, because they see every little thing and in a moment can just, wave their hand and free us from these things. But we have to sincerely ask. We have to really find that place in ourselves that allows us to say, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this. It's going to take me way too long to try to figure it out, and I may not even get there. That knot may not really come undone. It may be too tight and too wound up, but you know what to do. And so let me turn to you, and you can help me undo these things. Yogananda says that the freer we are inside, the more we actually have the ability to change what's happening in our lives. And so we're really looking for that sense of inner freedom, that calmness, that just viewing everything even-mindedly and knowing that it's all coming to us for a purpose. Just wanted to read some of Yogananda's words. Instead of accepting fatalistically the decrees of karma, follow the inner way to freedom. Meditate daily. Commune deeply with God. Learn from Him, through the silent voice of intuition, the way out of soul-degrading serfdom to habits. How long, how tragically long, have habits kept you fearful about the future? If unexpected fortune and misfortune in your life confuse you, seek the only solution there is to life's endless puzzle: deep meditation and increasing attunement with wisdom through daily contact with the ever-free, infinite Spirit. He said it's the only solution there is to turn within. As I was reading that, I was reminded, because it brings up our habits. And our habits are, things that we've initiated, but then once we've created this habit, it becomes self-propelling, and that can make it kind of difficult to get out of a habit. I was talking with Padma the other day, and I was just talking to her about some of my habits and patterns that had started to recognize in myself, and she was very patient and listened to me and really was hearing me. And then what she offered, kind of after I had shared what I needed to share, was, well, that's not really that important what your past habits have been. What you have to do is you have to turn within, you have to talk to Master. You need his help to get through this. It's not about everything that's happened in the past that got you to this place, what are you going to do about it now? And I just was so appreciative of that, because it just kind of released me from this kind of mental whirlpool that I was in of, okay, all these things led up to this place, and what do I do now? Of course, turn within, Master knows what to do. He knows how to untie that knot. I don't have to figure it out. Each one of us, we just have to go within and ask for the help that's there for us, if we can find that place in ourselves to ask. Sri Yukteswar said to forget the past. He said, I have it written down here, so I just want to make sure I say it right. He said, the vanished lives of all men are dark with many shames. Human conduct is ever unreliable until it is anchored in the divine. Everything in the future will improve if you are making the spiritual effort now. That made me think, too, of why it is we don't remember all of our past lives. We could get really caught up in feeling ashamed of the things we've done in the past, just kind of almost like getting too distracted by, oh, I did this before and I did this, and it's just like all these memories that don't really serve us. And so he says, forget the past. Make the spiritual effort now, and everything in the future will improve. And human conduct is unreliable until it is anchored in the divine. We have to find that divine anchor. There's a very compelling story in the autobiography of a yogi, of one of Yogananda's students at his school in Ranchi, Kashi. If we've all read the book, we'll probably all remember the story, but he's out one day with a group of his students, and they're asking him these questions about what's going to happen to them. And one student asks him, will I always be a renunciate? Will I always be here with you? And he says, oh no, you're gonna leave and you're gonna get married. And the boy thinks, no, I will not do that. And sure enough, that comes to pass. And another boy, Kashi, asks him, well, what will be my fate, sir? And Yogananda said that with this irresistible force, he just, out of his mouth came, you will soon be dead. And then right away he thought, I'm not going to answer any more questions. I shouldn't have said that. And so when they got back to school, this boy Kashi comes to him and is just, very sincerely asking him, sir, if I do die, will you please find me when I'm reincarnated and bring me back to the spiritual path? And Yogananda says, that's a big promise. I couldn't tell him, yes, I could do that, because he wasn't sure that he could. And so he kind of brushed him aside. But for weeks, Kashi keeps coming to him and keeps saying, please find me, please bring me back to the spiritual path in my next life. And just with his determination to call to Yogananda for this help, Yogananda finally agrees and says, okay, I will try. And if I have God's help, I will find you and I will, do what I can. And so the story goes on, and after about 6 months, and so Kashi does at one point leave the school with his family for a few days, eats some contaminated food, and passes on very quickly. And after about 6 months after his passing, Yogananda says he had been kind of calling to the universe regularly, asking for the soul of that boy Kashi to reveal himself to him. And then one day he feels him, and he's kind of holding his hands up, and he feels this energy, and it guides him to this door. He knocks on the door and talks to the man in the household and says, have you and your wife been expecting a baby for about 6 months? He says yes, and he tells him, what that boy will be like, and tells him the story of everything that had happened, and just tells him, you have a very spiritually inclined son that will be born to you. And the man accepts what he says, and they give him the name Kashi again. And it says that later on, when Yogananda's in America, as a teenager, the reborn Kashi reaches out to him and asks him for help once again, and Yogananda's able to direct him to someone that can help him where he is. And, like I said, this is a very compelling story, and, the lessons in this story for us really are that what Kashi did is he just was so determined. He had that sense of perseverance where he kept calling on the Guru and said, I need your help. You have to help me. You know, whatever comes up, I need your help to find me, to help me. And really that's what we have to do too. We have to keep calling on the Guru to help us, because you know, we're in this wheel of reincarnation, and it's just going to keep turning and spinning until we are really sincerely asking to be let out, to be free in God. And so let us, you know, just hold that in our hearts and know that the help is there when we are sincerely calling and asking for it. I'd like to close with